Welcome to the 31st episode of the Prometheus Analysis series, where I delve into Ridley Scott's 2012 science fiction film. This is the Film Symbologist. In this installment of the series, I will explore the pilot, or so-called space jockey, from 1979's Alien. What or who is this being? Why is he there? What was he doing? And what is the connection to Prometheus? All these questions and more will be explored in this video. The franchise's first installment played an integral role in shaping the science fiction horror genre by capturing audiences' imaginations and attention through fear and wonder. The xenomorph monster became an instant icon in popular culture. The creature felt new, unique, and unlike anything people had seen before. Based on the nightmarish visions of the artist H.R. Giger, the xenomorph alien was both appealing and horrifying for moviegoers in the late 70s. The popularity of the film and the monster helped launch an entire franchise of films, comics, spin-offs, and now a television show. The first film also introduced audiences to an equally mysterious being seated on a massive chair in a strange structure. The gigantic creature with elephantine features appeared completely alien. To most people, it looked like the decayed skeleton of a strange being has fossilized and fused to the chair it was sitting in. It seems to have been the intention of Alien's filmmakers to design a set piece that would awe audiences with both its scale and lack of resemblance to anything that would be familiar to them. In the 1980s and 90s, 3 Alien sequels were made, each of which focused on the xenomorph and none of which explored the pilot. Meanwhile, the director of the first film, Ridley Scott, made another genre-defining film with Blade Runner in the early 80s, after which his filmmaking career veered away from science fiction to other genres, including fantasy, historical epic, thriller, drama, crime, and adventure films. In interviews, Scott has said that during that time, he continued to think about the Alien universe, and even considered returning to the franchise. Scott felt that the xenomorph, though, had been overdone, commercialized, and stripped of its mystique. He was instead intrigued by the aspect of the franchise that hadn't been delved into yet.
There's one question no one asked in all 4 movies, much to my amazement and surprise. No one said, who's the big guy in the seat? This guy sitting in his chair in the middle of this craft, clearly a craft, was a big question. Who was that?
Since no subsequent films in the franchise had revisited or expanded upon the space jockey, Scott saw an opportunity to bring new life, so to speak, to the Alien universe. In the late 2000s, he began working on a film that would explore the being in the chair and serve as a direct prequel to Alien. Jonathan Spates was brought on to pitch ideas and write a script. Among the ideas that Spates developed was a reimagining of the skeletal mass in the chair as a human-like being inside of a suit. This idea survived throughout the script writing process and through Damon Lindelof's screenplay rewrites, and made it into the finished film. Many fans of the original film and the franchise were disappointed with this revelation. For decades, people believed that the creature in the chair was an ancient life form of unknown origin, indeterminate species, and incomprehensible background. For many, it felt like a betrayal to turn this bizarre creature into a being that is apparently genetically identical to humans. I know this is how I felt initially, but a few things have helped me to accept this retconning. For starters, the cosmic dread depicted in Alien is already paradoxical. On the one hand, the idea that mankind's first contact with intelligent alien life consists of long dormant predatory beings of enormous size and great strength reinforces the futility of our lives. If this is what our first encounter is like, What other horrors must be out there in the vast abyss of space? On the other hand, this terrifying and supposedly perfect killing machine is thwarted single-handedly by a lone female space trucker. So how scared should we really be? Connecting the pilot's race with humanity helps mitigate aliens' sense of futility and pointlessness. And Fede Alvarez's Romulus installment in the series addressed some of the xenomorphs' vulnerabilities by making them nearly indestructible, even in the vacuum of outer space. Another reason I softened on the retconning of the space jockey is because of what I've come to learn about the filmmaking process and the benefits of connecting with audiences through practical effects and real actors. Filmmaking is difficult and expensive. Delays affect actors' schedules, create scheduling conflicts, increase production costs, and impact morale on set. Making a film requires coordinating between innumerable different people involved in everything from set and costume design and production to budget and financing, and from cinematography and sound design to editing and marketing. Practical effects and sets can not only help actors to immerse themselves in their acting assignment, but also make the sets feel like authentic, lived-in places for the audience. Using real actors instead of CGI characters provides similar benefits. Likewise, people tend to connect better and innately care more about characters with human features than characters with cartoonish-looking or unrelatable appearances. A third reason for why I've become content with the pilot suit is that when you really think about it, Giger's design wasn't all that alien. The creature clearly has a head, neck, shoulders, 2 arms, a torso, and a skeletal design reminiscent of creatures found on Earth. We can even recognize some of the features as being elephant-like. So far from a completely alien being, this is clearly a bipedal carbon-based creature imbued with qualities that are unmistakably familiar. This was clearly not Giger's intention, but we can't really escape our nature. As much as we try to think outside the box, our inspiration is inevitably drawn from things we've seen, experienced, or dreamed, whether we're aware of it or not.
What do you do if you're gonna go make a movie about that guy and his comrades on some big starship? They look ridiculous, they'll be unintentionally funny, we won't relate to them because they're not people. The only way you could go dive into the story of the space jockeys is if their story was ultimately ours.
While the space jockey piloting a juggernaut ship did make it into Prometheus, Scott and the studio decided not to proceed with a direct prequel. So the last engineer is not the same being that we see in the derelict from Alien. The remainder of this video will explore a few different scenarios for how the pilot may have ended up on LV-426, and how that relates to what was happening on LV-223. One possibility for the derelict spacecraft is that it landed and sent out the beacon after the events of Prometheus. This would help explain why there's no mention of any signals coming from the star system in the 2012 film. Or the ship and eggs were there on LV-426, but the signal was set later by someone. Perhaps David was somehow involved after the events of Covenant. But there's reason to doubt that the derelict crashed or the beacon was set after the events of Prometheus. According to the Weyland files and the extra features of the Prometheus Blu-ray, the Weyland Corporation detected the signal coming from LV-426 prior to embarking on the Prometheus expedition, and they planned to have David explore that moon after LV-223. If this is canon, it confirms that the signal is emanating from the derelict on LV-426 prior to the company's venture to the system. I think it can also be assumed that the ovomorph eggs are already there in the ship, since it appears that the space jockey was chest bursted by a xenomorph creature. For Prometheus, not only was the space jockey retconned into an engineer in a suit, but hypersleep pods were added to the pilot's room as well. Perhaps a future film will reveal who exactly the space jockey is, and will either add cryosleep chambers to the set or provide an explanation for why they're absent. One reason could be that the derelict ship is a short-range ship that lacked hypersleep pods. Another is that the derelict carrying the overmorph eggs is a different model ship from the juggernauts carrying the black goo, and the stasis units are in different locations. If we assume the derelict ship, the eggs, and the signal are all in place prior to the events of Prometheus, there are several possible explanations. Let's explore some of them. In episode 23 of this series, I described an interpretation of the LV-223 engineer's plan in which juggernauts filled with black goo urns would be brought to Earth, and then separate juggernauts filled with ovomorph eggs would be brought afterwards. In this scenario, the black goo is the gift of stolen fire that precedes the acceptance and opening of Pandora's jars. The ultimate goal would not be to create deacons, but some unknown creature. Due to the so-called outbreak on LV-223, however, neither the ships with the black goo nor those with the eggs made it to Earth. Instead, all but one of the ships remained docked in their underground hangar bays. That one escaped LV-223, but its pilot was infected and immediately crash-landed on LV-426. A third possibility for the space jockey is that he was bringing the eggs to LV-223. As seen in Alien Romulus, the Renaissance Research Station was making a compound by extracting black goo from facehuggers. Perhaps the LV-223 engineers were doing something similar to make their goo. The derelict ship may have been one of many juggernauts bringing eggs to LV-223, so that the engineers could create the black goo from the facehuggers inside the eggs. But the pilot may have been facehugged as the ship approached LV-223, so he had to make an emergency landing on LV-426, and he sent out a warning signal notifying other engineers to stay away. In this scenario, the apparent outbreak on LV-223 is independent from what happened to the space jockey. A fourth scenario is that the engineers planned to bring the black goo to Earth in order to create facehugger-like creatures. In Alien Romulus, we see that chestbursters create cocoons when transforming into xenomorphs, and xenomorphs cocoon themselves in order to survive harsh environments like space. Perhaps under certain circumstances, facehugger-like creatures will cocoon themselves into ovomorph eggs. Maybe the blue mist in the chamber of the derelict ship helps create those conditions. The space jockey may have been bringing cocooned facehuggers back to LV-223 after another successful black goo mission on another planet, but he was implanted by his cargo upon arrival and crash-landed on LV-426. A fifth option is that the engineers' ultimate plan was to deploy ovomorphs on their enemies. As shown in the film's final scene, the deacon is born alongside an egg-like mass. Perhaps the ceiling mural in the ampule room depicts a deacon depositing a facehugger inside of an egg in order to create an ovomorph. The engineers may have successfully used black goo to create deacons and ovomorph eggs on other planets. The derelict ship could have been stationed somewhere on LV-223, with its cargo of eggs collected from another mission. Then there was an outbreak of facehuggers on LV-223, which prevented the mission to Earth to create more eggs, and caused the infected space jockey to flee LV-223 and crash on a neighboring moon. The last two scenarios speculate about a method for producing ovomorph eggs that deviates from the method shown in deleted scenes from Alien, in which crew members captured by the xenomorph are transformed into eggs. It also differs from the method shown in Aliens, where a xenomorph queen lays eggs. And then there's David's method as depicted in Alien Covenant. There could be multiple ways to create ovomorphs that also include facehuggers cocooning and deacons implanting facehugger embryos inside empty eggs. The franchise seems to leave the door open to many different options. At times, things like this may be frustrating, especially when trying to determine exactly what happened and how things are connected. But this ambiguity may be intentional. Especially with Prometheus, the filmmakers may be trying to draw our attention away from the details of what, when, and how precisely things are happening, so that we instead focus on the broader themes and bigger picture the story is trying to present. Ideas related to rebelling against the cosmic order, divine punishment, and the taking, giving, receiving, and accepting of, and tampering with forbidden knowledge are at play throughout the series in various ways. These themes can be applied to the human members of the crews, the androids, the corporations, the black goo, the Z01 compound, the ovomorph eggs, the LV-223 engineers, and the space jockey. The cargo of ovomorph eggs in the derelict ship can be seen as Zeus's stolen thunderbolt, Prometheus's fire, counterfeit philosophers' stones, and forbidden knowledge. LV-426 can be interpreted as a kind of Mount Caucasus, where the rebel titan is chained and punished by having his innards ripped out for eternity. In Alien, a group of hapless space truckers stumble upon the derelict, and Kane accidentally unleashes a monster, and his punishment faces the same fate as the space jockey. In Aliens, the same fate is again repeated by the human colony prior to the events of the film, and then again by the Marines during the film. Just as the ancient myth says, the punishment for playing with fire seems to be eternal, repetitive torment. For decades, none of the subsequent films in the Alien franchise attempted to answer the question, who is the pilot of the derelict? With his 2012 return to the series and the science fiction genre, Scott provides an answer to that question and to many others. The space jockey is Prometheus. But so is Peter Weyland, and Kane, and the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, and Hadley's Hope Colony, and the Colonial Marines, and us. We are Prometheus. But our fate is not yet sealed. There is still hope for you and I, if we're up for the challenge. In future installments in this series, I will explore the alternatives to the Titan's fate. If you enjoy content like this, like the video, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel. For early access to new videos, consider becoming a member of the YouTube channel or Patreon. Links about how to join are provided in the video description. This is the Film Symbologist. Thanks for watching.